Let's fix it.
Today we're working on a Poulan push mower with an 8.5 horsepower Briggs and Stratton engine. Now it won't start, so we're going to take it apart and see if we can't get it running again. First thing to do is remove these two flathead screws to get down to the air filter into the carburetor. And you can see the air filter is dirty, so that's going to need either replaced or cleaned up. And you can do that with hot soapy water. And if you have an air gun, you can go ahead and blow that out. Next, I'm going to remove the spark plug, so go ahead and pull the boot off and get your ratchet and pull out the spark plug. And that's a 5/8 socket that I'll be taking that out with. And the spark plug used in this is the Champion RC12YC. And as you can see, this one's dirty. This could probably be cleaned or replaced, depending on what you want to do. So as of right now, we have a bad spark plug and a dirty air filter. Now the fuel tank is completely drained, but that doesn't mean that there's some fuel down in the bottom of the carburetor that was never cleaned out. So I'm willing to bet the carburetor's dirty too. So we're going to get down there and take that off. Now I'm going to be using my impact driver to remove these bolts, but when I put it back on, I'm going to be using my hand ratchet so I don't over torque these. So I'm going to take off the air filter housing now with these two 5/16 bolts. And on the back of the air filter housing is the vent tube, so just be careful when you pull this off. And there is a gasket that sits right down here, and just be sure that that's not damaged. Might be hard to pick up on the camera, but as you can see, the vent tube is cracked, and that might be one of the reasons why this mower wouldn't run. And this is where the air vent tube was sitting, and that connects to the bottom of the air filter housing. Then go ahead and pull the clamp back from the fuel line and then disconnect the fuel hose from the carburetor. Oh, and I can smell old fuel now. So that's telling me that there's probably old fuel down at the bottom of this carburetor. Now I'm going to remove these two 3/8 bolts. There's one on each side holding the carburetor. And again, be careful because there is a gasket on the back side, so when you put it back on, make sure that gasket's back. With one bolt still in, you can disconnect the governor linkage spring and then pull the next bolt out. Okay, see how that came apart there? Just make sure that that goes back when you reinstall. And from here, you can go ahead and tilt this till you get the right angle to disconnect the throttle cable from the carburetor. This connects to the butterfly on the carb. Have a shop towel ready because if there is old fuel in this, it's going to leak all over. So I went ahead and put that on top of this old rag. Now we're going to need a 1/2-inch socket to take this bolt out. Once that's loosened, go ahead and remove this, and be careful again, there is a gasket that sits on top of that. Set that aside, and now you can take the bowl cover off. And if you can see down in there, that's a dirty bowl that'll need cleaned out with carburetor cleaning fluid. And then we'll go ahead and push the pin out. Okay, pull the pin out. Take off the float and the jet that sits underneath, and pay attention to how that is in there because it'll need to go back the same way. And we'll get some carburetor fluid and clean out the inside of the carburetor here. The two areas you really want to focus on is the fuel inlet, and that comes through here, through this hole, and then down here in the main jet, as well as under the Welch plugs on either side, and the inside of the carburetor itself. Just make sure it's free of all debris, no obstructions. And if you have an old thin piece of wire, try and run it through the small holes to make sure there's no obstructions in there. Also, on the bottom of the 1/2-inch bolt, there's little holes inside of this. You want to make sure that that's free so the fuel's flowing properly. So get your carb cleaning can with the tip attached and start cleaning out all those holes I was talking about. Now that it's all cleaned out, go ahead and reinstall the float with the needle jet on the bottom. That goes right down in the hole. It sits down like that. And you'll need to put the pin back through the holes here. Just like that. And you go ahead and install the fuel bowl back on. Then the 1/2 inch bolt, make sure that you have that gasket back on. Put that back on the carb bowl and tighten that up. Reattach at the butterfly to the throttle linkage here. And you might have to turn it a couple times so you actually get it in there. Then install your 3/8 bolts, one on each side. Remember to make sure that that gasket goes back in. And grab your governor linkage and hook that back up. Then reattach your fuel line. And move the clamp all the way down so it sits tight. Step is reattaching the air filter housing with the 5/16 bolts. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to just put the same vent tube back on. I'll replace it with another one. But that goes, remember, up underneath the air filter housing and into the tube that comes out of the engine itself. And you want to make sure that vent tube is pushed up all the way on both sides. I don't know where this mower's been, but it looks like they were mowing a lot of dirt. It's all caked up. So this will probably definitely need replaced. The outside cover, that might come with a new part, I don't know, but you can just, like I said, put that in soapy water and that'll clean right up. Just make sure it's dry before you put it back together. Reinstall your new spark plug or your cleaned up one. Okay, once the spark plug's back in, the boot cover's on, go ahead and put your air filter back on. Grab the top cover. Get the holes aligned. Then tighten down the 2 flathead screws. We'll put some fuel in it and see how we did. So to be honest, it did take like 4, 5, 6 pulls until it finally started. I just didn't add that to the video because it was me walking back and forth to the camera. It seemed like a waste of time, so don't be discouraged if it doesn't start on the first pull like mine did. Just keep pulling it a couple times. It'll start. So if you like these videos, be sure to subscribe. Click on Roger's face. He's down in the right-hand corner. You'll be a Neighborhood Go-To subscriber. Comment and like, and I'll see you next time from the Neighborhood Go-To guy.